Okay, welcome my little ninjas. Tonight we're going to look at Tokugawa Japan. Now before we start looking at Tokugawa Japan, here is a map of modern Japan. And as you can see, Japan has 4 main islands, but actually thousands of small islands. It's close to Russia, it's close to China, it's close to North and South Korea. And so this island heritage has really defined their history and their identity. Now the period we need to start looking at when we look at Tokugawa Japan is right before this period, and it's called the Era of Warring States. So it's a period of chaos, of civil war, if you will. In this time period, you have all of these powerful families called daimyo who are fighting for total control of Japan. The absolute goal of these noble families is to be called shogun. Shogun is the most powerful title in Japan. To become shogun, the emperor of Japan has to declare you shogun. Okay? Now, the emperor has no political power whatsoever. All of his power is his religious and ceremonial power. He is believed to be the descendant of the sun goddess Amaterasu, who helped to create the Japanese islands back in its prehistoric days. So there's basically a competition for all of these powerful warlords and noble families to become the most powerful warlord and noble family, and so that the emperor can bestow upon them the honor of this title, shogun. Now, the result is absolute chaos because these noble families, these daimyo, are all fighting each other, and they're doing so with their private samurai or knights, as well as peasants who live in their territories. Ah yes, the samurai. A few things you should know about the samurai. One, they're the highest social class in Japan. Most of the daimyo and shoguns are from this class. Notice I wrote all. There's one notable exception that you'll learn about in this presentation. Samurai lived their lives according to Bushido, the way of the warrior. This is similar to chivalry and European knights. It's an honor code, and so the samurai warriors believed they would rather die before they committed an act of dishonor. So this meant dishonoring themselves or dishonoring their families. They'd rather die than live with shame. And so this is where the samurai warriors would rather kill themselves than lose a battle or do something shameful that would bring dishonor to them or their families. They're also the only people in Japan who can carry weapons, so they're obviously very important because they have the status symbol that no one else does. And then lastly, as you can see, they keep order in 3 different ways. They are like policemen, and they keep local order in the region. They are like the army. Whenever a foreign army attacks, they defend Japan. And then lastly, they actually work for their local daimyo. So they're like the private warriors, even better, the private generals for their local daimyo. Here's a famous samurai. JK LOL. Tom Cruise wasn't a samurai in real life. It's just for a movie. Now, this is what samurai actually look like. Notice they have multiple swords. They have a sword they'll fight you with, then they have a smaller sword. The sword they'll fight you with is the longer sword, and the shorter sword is one that they would do the unpleasant task of killing themselves if they lost a battle. The longer sword is called the katana, in case you're wondering. Now, the picture on the right looks like a little baby samurai, but it's actually an adult samurai. It's just one who's not very tall. And then one on the left is very scary because, as you notice, look at his face. He has this face plate on. So it has 2 purposes. One, it scares you. It scares me. And 2, it serves as armor for his face so he doesn't get chopped in the face with a sword. Unification! Unification! Now, the Japanese were responsible for unifying the country really through 3 different people, okay? It's not just one person who's doing this. There are 3 people, and they're all building on the previous actions of the previous daimyo. The first is Oda Nobunaga. The second is Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And the third and most famous is Tokugawa Ieyasu. Oda Nobunaga is the first, and many think that he is the most important because he is the person who starts the unification process. He is a very ruthless daimyo, so he's a military general, he's of the samurai class, and he is ruthless. What I mean by this is he wanted to intimidate people on the battlefield, kind of like the Mongols did. Machiavelli would really like Oda Nobunaga because he really caused people to fear him more than being loved. So if you look at the map, and you'll see one in a few minutes, he starts the process of unification by winning territories, really by scaring them and defeating them on the battlefield. It's not surprising that he is killed by one of his own generals because the people that he conquered, and even his own friends, not only did they not like him, they actually hated him. So he probably went too far. Now, one of his allies, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, as you can see here on this very scary dragon-looking horse, is famous because he takes over for Oda Nobunaga when Oda Nobunaga is assassinated. Now, Toyotomi Hideyoshi not only builds on what Nobunaga conquered, but he also organizes it. He's famous for making it more orderly. He orders a census, so he knows exactly how many people are in these territories and what they own, so he knows what they can be taxed. Okay, he also tries to conquer Korea twice in what was a major mistake for Japan. And listen to that, guys. We have a helicopter. Okay, back to Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He tried to conquer Korea twice. These were major mistakes for Japan, but it also set off a long history of bad blood between Korea and Japan. Fun fact, Toyotomi Hideyoshi was born as the son of a peasant, and he actually rose through the ranks and became a samurai. This is almost unheard of. And after he becomes the daimyo that's most powerful in Japan, he makes it illegal for someone to do what he just did, to move from one social class to the next. So he's also a bit of a hypocrite, if you ask me, but you didn't, so I'm not going to tell you what I think. You can see right here in this very old print of the Japanese under Toyotomi Hideyoshi attacking a Korean fort. The Koreans were actually supported by the Chinese, but that's another story for another day. And the last, Tokugawa Ieyasu. Tokugawa Ieyasu was an ally of Toyotomi Hideyoshi. And Toyotomi Hideyoshi died and had a very young son. And Tokugawa Ieyasu said, I pledge to support your son when he becomes old enough because he's the rightful daimyo of Japan. Well, guess what happens? Tokugawa Ieyasu not only does not keep that promise, but he defeats him in battle and wins a battle called the Battle of Sekigahara and becomes the most powerful daimyo in all of Japan. Now, winning this competition, the Emperor of Japan also declares him, that's right, folks, shogun. Now, what you're looking at right now is a huge print of the Battle of Sekigahara. You see a lot of different colors and flags and daimyo who are fighting. Don't ask me where Tokugawa Ieyasu is in here. Just take my word for it. He's in here. Now, the result of all of this activity, as you see on this map, is that Japan became unified. In the blue in the center, this is Oda Nobunaga's territory, and then as he wins battles, he starts adding to it, and that's what you're looking at in the gray. And then Toyotomi Hideyoshi takes up for him and keeps adding on to lands, and then eventually the work is taken over by Tokugawa Ieyasu, and he takes over the rest of Japan, and he makes his headquarters Edo. Today, Edo is a little city called Tokyo. Now, this is, in my opinion, the best way to remember the three unifiers, and it's an old parable in Japanese history. As you can read, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu were watching a bird and waiting for it to sing, but the bird wouldn't sing. Nobunaga says, little bird, if you don't sing, I will kill you. Hideyoshi says, little bird, if you don't sing, I will make you sing. And then Tokugawa Ieyasu says to the bird, little bird, if you don't sing, I will wait for you to sing. You can really see the three personalities of the three daimyo. And the most famous of these, Tokugawa Ieyasu, is known for being patient. And so when he becomes the last daimyo and then the shogun, called the first shogun of the Tokugawa shogunate, he shows his patience, and he really ends this process of unification. One of the ways that he does this is he takes over this town called Edo, today Tokyo, and he makes it his headquarters, and he builds a huge castle there, and it's still there today. It's the palace today. Sadly, it's now the imperial palace, so there's no more shogun in Tokyo, but now this is where the emperor lives. So it's kind of cool. You can still see it. Can you go to it? I'm not sure. I haven't been to Japan, but don't tell anyone. This is the biggest building within the castle complex, and you can see it's has many stories. It very much has a Chinese style. The Japanese took a lot of their culture from China in the ancient history of Japan, and you can still see that's evident in Japan today. And this is a map of what it looks like, and you can see that there is a moat, so almost like a fake river around it, and this is for protection. Now, the reason why Edo is so important is because Tokugawa Ieyasu made the daimyo declare their loyalty to him by coming and staying with him every other year. This is called the hostage system. So literally they had to live with him at his court, and so they had to stay close to him. One, this cost a lot of money for them to rent an apartment for a year or build a house for a year, and then live there. Two, they are now nowhere near their own region, so they can't stay away from him and plot to overthrow him. So it made them loyal to the shogun, and it also made them lose a lot of money. This is what he wanted, so then he could give them a loan, then they would owe him even more. Now, what happens in the even year when they get to go home? This is when they can send a family member to stay with him for a year, and then the next year the daimyo would have to come back and stay with the shogun once again. And finally, as you can see in this triangle that's so beautifully drawn, you have feudalism in Japan. You had feudalism in Europe as well. In Japan it's a little bit different because you have different levels, plus you have more of a religious level as well. Now, at the very top, you have the shogun. The shogun technically owns all the land in Japan, but the shogun, one man, can't control all this land. So he divides the land up among his daimyo, or his nobles. Now, the daimyo have the same problem. They can't control all of this territory that they were given by themselves, so they will divide it up into different pieces of land that the samurai who work for them will control, and then they will do the same thing for their peasants, okay? Notice, this isn't a social class pyramid. This is a political pyramid, okay? So the peasants will owe loyalty and taxes and labor to the samurai. They will owe loyalty, taxes, and labor to the daimyo. The daimyo will owe loyalty, taxes, and labor to the shogun. Now, floating off to the side, you have the emperor. Remember, guys, the emperor has no political power. He has only religious power. So, yes, he's still important, but no one listens to him when it comes to political matters. Even to this day, there is an emperor in Japan. However, it is against Japanese law for this emperor to have any influence in politics or government at all. Okay? That's all I got. Good night, little ninjas. See you soon. Bye.